Hello everyone and welcome to my Master Senna guide. Now, I have been playing Senna a lot. I have a lot of games on Senna. And, hitting Masters, I feel like there's probably a lot of people who want to play Senna. She's pretty hard to operate. She can be a little bit difficult. And so this is going to be my attempt to create just a guide for everything, I'm going to explain, first of all, I'm going to explain all of her abilities, how to optimize it. Then I'll kind of get into all the runes that you want to go. There's some options that you can do. And then I'll show you kind of like the build of what you want to go. I'm going to talk about matchups. I'm going to try and get it all into one, so this is going to be your one source for Senna knowledge. And without further ado, let's get right into it. Now, Senna passive is pretty much the core of her kit. She's kind of like Vigar, where you could be, well, I guess Vigar needs levels more than Senna does. But you could be low gold and low levels, but if you have high stacks, you will still be a high threat. And for a good frame of reference, the amount of stacks you want to have, like the benchmark is usually you want 20 every 5 minutes. If you have less than that, you're behind. If you have more than that, you're ahead. Typically around 25 minutes, I try and have around 120 stacks. That's usually like you're doing pretty good if you're around that range. And the whole art of Senna is learning how to stack while not dying. And believe me or not dying can be a difficult thing. Now Senna Q actually has it's very multi-utility early game. So there's going to be different ways to use Senna Q. The most common way that you're going to want to use is you're going to want to Q a minion, which will proc your fleet. And on one hand, that will heal you from your Q and your fleet. And if you could also line your teammate up into it, then that'll heal them as well. But you can use the movement speed from fleet to walk up and auto, or alternatively land a W, and that's what we'll get into next. So that's going to be your most common use of Q. It's also like it can be really safe if you manage to auto someone, but you don't have time to get the Q off. You can back up and try and Q a minion to get that extra stack. And when you have a little bit more AD, it can be good to heal your ADC or your Tahm Kench support, whoever you're playing with. But I would try to avoid doing that level 2, 3, 4 unless your ADC is really low, because the value is really low. A lot of it scales off of your bonus AD and lethality. So if you don't have bonus AD or lethality, then you're basically spending most of your mana away from that. So try to use it as an offensive tool rather than defensive to contribute towards your stacks if you can. But yeah, Senna Q, the heal can get pretty strong with healing, or with lethality, of course, but realistically you probably aren't going more than 2 lethality items a game, or at least you shouldn't be, but I'll get into that. Now Senna W is probably her most important offensive tool. One of the most common trading patterns you'll be doing in lane is some matchups you just can't auto people. Like, you just can't. If you try and walk up to a Zyra to auto her, she's just gonna land all of her skill shots on you and kill you. Unless you're at like 60 stacks or something, it's a little bit easier. But for something like what you would do is you're gonna want to Q through the wave, and then you can like walk around when there's an opening and try and land a W. Now W is a pretty slow skill shot. It's pretty high reward if you land it, because you can get an additional stack and you can get a root in. But the root is pretty low early game. Level 1, since it's your second maxed ability, because you're always going to be maxing Q first, no questions asked. Your W is only going to be 1 second root early game, and it goes up to 2 seconds max rank, which is a huge difference. That's more than double when it's fully ranked. But it can be a fantastic engage tool when you're wanting to look for a fight, especially if you have like a Jhin or someone who can follow up on that CC. And it's also a very like effective disengage tool when you combine it with E. I'll get into E in a moment. But yeah, W is a fantastic tool. I would almost compare it like Ezreal W, but instead it's more utility rather than damage. But it can be very hard to land. You have to do a lot of prediction of where they're gonna walk. If you just try and shoot it directly where they are, you're gonna miss every single time. And the W AD scaling is stronger than Q scaling. So while it doesn't proc auto effects, like maybe you have a rapid fire or something, that would do additional damage for Q. But in general, your W is going to do more damage than your Q because Q got nerfed. Now, Senna E is a very, very powerful disengage ability. Senna E, for example, one of my favorite uses for Senna E is actually versus Ashe and Twitch. So if Twitch or Ashe, like Ashe likes to kite you down, she just likes to run you down with her passive, of course, cross shot. But for like Twitch as well, he'll usually like W and then ult you from really far away. If you press E as Senna, you get camouflage and they just can't auto you, and you just walk away as long as you don't have too slow of movement speed. So it is a fantastic disengage tool. It could also save your teammates as well if they're trying to run away. But it is important to note that there's a little bit of a startup. It has like a 1.5 second startup. So you have to do it predictively. And if you auto during it, then it removes your camouflage and you takes like a while to get the movement speed ramping again. So if you intend to use E, you have to either be like, if you're trying to run away, I wouldn't try and like kite outside, maybe throwing like a QW. I wouldn't try and auto because it disrupts the ability quite a lot. But it could also be a fantastic engage tool. If your jungler is ganking, you can run in with E and they'll have no idea that your jungler is even there. A lot of people in solo queue are not thinking about that. So it could be a very powerful tool. And yeah, like if you're ever getting ganked, throwing out your W and just E'ing away is usually like, as long as they don't have like Jarvan ult or like Shaco one shots, like you should be pretty fine to like escape as long as you're playing vision correctly. Now Senna ult is pretty self-explanatory. I like to use Senna ult for the shield. I think the shield is much more impactful than the damage. Specifically, like let's say top lane or mid lane is duking it out. Like whether you land preferably you land the damage, but even if you don't, the shield can sometimes win team fights alone. And it's important to note that the shield scales with stacks. So if you're stacking well, then that shield is going to be stronger. Outside that, I don't know, snipes, damage. There's not really a whole lot to explain. It collects souls, so if you ever see like loads of souls and an opportunity to like potentially kill someone, I guess why not? But yeah, R is a pretty one-dimensional ability. Be careful with the snipes. I feel like I waste ult a lot on missed snipes, and sometimes it's just not worth it. Cause like, it's not like, it's kind of like Luxar, but like even harder to land, where it's like a good player will probably just sidestep it. So like, I guess it'll be more effective the lower elo you are, but yeah, I would be careful about that. Now, Senna items, as far, let's go into levels first. For the levels you want to run, typically levels, excuse me, runes. There's two different types of builds you can do. Now, I would say three different ways. You're always gonna want to run fleet, and the reason you always want to run fleet is because one, it allows you to disengage better, to run away. It allows you to engage and stack better, and the healing is so huge to sustaining. It gives you a lot more sustain, and that's a lot of how you win matchups is out sustaining people. Just run fleet, trust me. You're going to want presence of mind because you're always going to be needing mana. You're going to want legend alacrity because you aren't going to be building very many attack speed items. And depending on the comp, you 90% of the time you'll want cut down. Although you can occasionally go coup de grace. But that being said, cut down is getting nerfed next patch. I think you're going to want to go coup de grace after that. But I have no idea how effective cut down is going to be. In terms of secondaries, you have three different options you can pick from. My favorite to go is Celerity and Gathering Storm. And the reason I like Celerity is it allows you to buy your boots faster than going something like Magical Footwear. But it also makes you faster from Fleet, in addition to like Storm Razor, if you were to decide to buy that. Which I'll get into the build path in a moment. And then Gathering Storm, just because you're trying to scale. Senna's a late game character, it's just a great rune on her. But that's one of the options. The other options, I think you could go Bone Plating or Conditioning, one of these two, into something like Revitalize. I think this is if you want to go for something more tanky. That being said, I think the higher elo you go, the more you want movement speed over armor, because I think movement speed is the most effective stat to be tankier, to just dodge stuff. And you really want to be kiting as Senna. And the third path you can go is something like this. You could also go, well, Futures Market is actually getting removed. So that's not going to be a choice. I think they're replacing this with like the Elixir, but I don't think that Triple Tonic next patch is going to get moved down to here. I'll put like a chart up or something, hopefully. But Triple Tonic, I don't think is that effective of a rune on Senna. And the reason for that is once you get above level 13, you're just upgrading B, which lowers the cooldown and ups the duration. But it's really not that significant. Rarely are you ever fully using 6 seconds and wanting more. Usually it's like 3 or 4 seconds. And then you kind of use the spell. So it's just not worth it. This build, I think it's more effective when you want to stack armor early. Because if you're going something like, for example, Celerity Gathering Storm, then you're probably 90% of the time buying like Swifty's Rush, and you're just gonna try and do you're very low impact during lane, but you can stack more. I think this, it's pretty strong scaling because, believe it or not, Magical Footwear, you get 2 more mobility than you would get going Celerity. Granted, it's reduced because Fleet Foot works, Celerity comes, yeah. But I think Approach Velocity is a really strong rune. If you queue a minion and onto a player, you can combine that with Fleet to potentially get a stack. That being said, I feel like most players just expect it. If you like, they kind of like maintain distance unless they're looking to engage. So I feel like without boots, it's kind of hard to stack early game. So I really don't know how I feel about this. This is what I'm going 70 to 80% of my games, I would say, generally. As for the minor runes, always attack speed, because you aren't building attack speed, so you need it in your runes. And then I always go movement speed because I think Senna does not struggle with 80. I think she's buying 80 in her items. I don't think Senna is trying to destroy lane early. I think she's trying to survive and scale, and I think the movement helps substantially more. In addition to, well, I guess Swifties is getting nerfed 14.10. But as for these runes, you have some options. I always go health scaling or tenacity and slow resist. For example, if you're facing Ashe or like Zillion, you'll probably want the slow resist because the abilities are kind of cancer. But usually health scaling is the safe rune to take 80% of games. Now as for items is that's a whole topic right there. I think the items you're going to be buying, or the item you're going to be buying most often in your games is going to be Eclipse. I think Eclipse is your core item that you're working with. It gives Senna everything she needs except mobility. Trading as Senna early game can be rough if you don't have a lead, especially with ADCs. But the shield ability haste, the ability haste translates into more survivability because it means you're E'ing more. You have more disengage. You have more roots, your W, and you have more slows and heals from your Q. So that leads to a lot more survivability. The shield, of course, and the passive where you just proc the maximum health is so huge versus tanks. Without Eclipse, you can really start to struggle to deal with tanks, or like taking your chance. For example, like Cassante. Without Eclipse, you will just not deal any damage to Cassante until like 3 items. I think Eclipse is a great item to rush. I would probably do it like 60% of games-ish, but it really depends. But yeah, talking about next, I'm going to be talking a lot about next patch, next items. The new Kraken Slayer, I think, looks insane on Senna. I don't know if I'm gonna put it right there on the screen, but I believe it gives 50 attack damage, 40% attack speed, 7% movement speed, and it gives it's passive, but it doesn't have crit anymore. Now, ADCs are bummed out that it doesn't have crit anymore, but with Senna, usually by 15 minutes, you're at like, what, like 60 stacks? So that's like 30% chance crit. Which means that as Senna, you don't really need to go a crit item until second item. So I think something that's, for example, I think Kraken is going to become core on her. I think there's going to be a little bit of variety in builds. I think you're going to be picking between Kraken Slayer as your main item, as your first item, or you're going to be picking between Eclipse next patch. And the items to go along with that, we'll get into that in a minute. But one item that definitely needs to be talked about is Phantom Dancer. The stats, like, look at that. Look at those stats. 60% attack speed, 12% movement speed. 12% is disgusting, by the way. Like, that's just not okay. For reference, Lichbane is 8%, Storm Surge is 8%, Rapid Fire is 7%. It's just nuts. Like, I think you're gonna be going Phantom Dancer potentially every game, because it helps you kite, it helps you chase. Senna, like, honestly, like you could potentially start to take away. So one thing about the runes is they're taking away Legend Tenacity and replacing it with Legend Haste, and Legend Haste is gonna be there. Like, you could potentially use that instead of Alacrity since there's so much attack speed stacked into items. But yeah, I think something like one build is going to be like Eclipse into IE. IE gives 80 AD now. And by the time you have IE second item, you're probably getting what, like 15 to, I would say like 18-20 minutes in. um, and you'll have like 60% chance, 60 to 70% chance crit with that, which is going to be very strong. I think the alternative build path is going to be Kraken into PD. I think one is much more of a damage leaning build, the other is much more of a attack speed kiting build. And I think you're going to be able to select it depending on the comp you're facing. As for third and fourth items, Senna has a lot of flexibility in what she can pick. You will not be wanting to go 2 Zeal items. That's a little troll. And Stormrazor is getting removed, which is very, very sad. Next patch. So, that being said, Fleet is getting buffed to 1.25 seconds from 1, which will kind of make up for it. But yeah, I think the first item you're probably looking at Eclipse, i.e. You could probably throw an Umbral first in there, depending on the matchup. Some matchups, for example, if you're facing like Ash Support or Pike, they're buying Umbral, so you're going to want to counter that with your own Umbral, because facing someone with Umbral and not having Umbral sucks. Or, for example, someone like Bard. Bard is always going to be running around the map roaming. I think that could be a great buy into him. You'll probably want to do Umbral usually, or you can skip it depending on their comp and how important Vision is. Into Eclipse, into either IE. Black Cleaver is actually a great buy with Eclipse, and the reason for that is if you Q a minion through a wave, it'll proc Eclipse automatically because that counts as an effect. Black Cleaver is proccing. So Eclipse into Black Cleaver is very strong, especially if your team is full AD. That gives incentive to run that build. And then as for your fourth item, I guess it kind of depends. You could go Edge of Night. That's one option. You could go a Rapid Fire Cannon. That's another option. Or you could go Moonstone if you want to provide more utility to the team. Moonstone is okay to build because it like multiplies your healing on your Q by like 40% and your shielding, which is just nuts. And then like you could build like, I don't know, like GA, Visage. Senna has a lot of flexibility with what her fourth item could be. But as for her second build, you're probably going to want something like a Kraken. You're going to want Kraken into like PD, maybe IE. I feel like IE is just going to be a must buy because it's overtuned. Into like Armor Pen fourth item, or if you don't need Armor Pen, then I don't know, like maybe the Bleed item. There's like a new Bleed item that's really strong that scales with like 35% of your AD. But yeah, those are going to be the two main builds you're going to be running, and you're going to have to pick between them in addition to those rune varieties. Now let's get into matchups, shall we? All right, Senna tier list. This is just showcasing what matchups I think is where. And when you want to pick Senna, I don't know. I'm a one trick, so I'll just first pick Senna. But if you don't main Senna, what matchups to avoid picking her in? Because some matchups are significantly easier than others. Some you'll be able to stack a lot better than others. Now, first we're going to start with Alistar. I think Alistar, I'm going to put it in even. And the reason Alistar is an even matchup is because when he sweeps the bush, it can get really hard to play up and farm because he's basically just going to cheese you. If he doesn't buy sweeper, then like the matchup can be pretty easy and he could just get bullied. There is potential to bully him out level 1 if he has a really weak ADC level 1, and you could just win the lane from there. But there's also a lot of risks that with the lane, like you can get dove. I think it's really easy to stack level 1 and 2, but level 3 onwards, it can get a little hard to ever run around him. One of the big benefits about this lane is you really start outscaling him at like 60 stacks, I would say. Like it starts getting pretty safe to Q auto and walk away. Uh, but he's also going to be probably roaming a lot more than you are early game, and he might make your jungler or mid lane's life a living hell. It's a pretty skill based matchup, and I'd say I'd go. It would go 50-50, I'd say. A Moo, um, I think a Moo is even. Maybe leaning towards easy, a little easier than Alistar. Um, it can be really rough early levels, like especially like level 1 and 2. Like they're just gonna want to kill you like the moment you step around. Uh, especially if he's standing in bushes or really far back, you can't walk up to stack because if he lands Q, you're probably just gonna die. Um, I think early, if you go in early, what's it, Edge of Night, I think early Edge of Night is a very effective item against him. But also, if you build Edge of Night, you're not going to be able to damage him because he's going to be building armor. Um, but this is one of those outscale and you'll just win the game matchups. A lot of it is just surviving, similar to Blitzcrank, as we'll come up in a minute. Um, Bard, I think Bard is actually an easy matchup. I think the most difficult part about Bard is he's going to do a couple things. He's going to roam and like impact the map. And I think as long as you're not too far behind, then you can roam with him and like potentially impact the map as well. And just like you also have a global ult, so at level 6, like even if you want to just pressure their ADC while he's roaming, you could dive their ADC potentially, or just get him to like lose a bunch of farm freeze on them. And you could still impact the map with your level 6. Uh, but I think one of the most difficult parts about this matchup, he's gonna portal through the wall like right behind you, right next to your tower, and it's a pretty easy way to die. So you have to be very careful and ward very well against him. A lot of Bard is going to be a vision war. I think Bard is someone who's a great way to beat Bard is to buy Umbral Glaive and just beat him through vision. Because a Bard that has no vision is just scared to go anywhere on the map. Like he could just get picked. Uh, but I would say it's definitely leaning towards easy. Just don't walk up too far in front of your minions because he's gonna Q a minion and you're gonna die because you're gonna be stunned, looking like an idiot. Um, yeah, just be careful of his Q and the match and his E, and the matchup is not very difficult. I think he can be like pretty free stacks since you like outrange him and out sustain him. Blitzcrank, I think Blitzcrank is one of Senna's worst matchups. Uh, it gets a little easier when you have it gets substantially easier when you have Edge of Night, and if you are facing Blitzcrank, you're going to be rushing Edge of Night first item. Let's be real. Even then, he can run up and ult to get rid of your shield and still Q you. Uh, it just it feels really bad this matchup because all it takes is him just landing a hook, and the most you can do is just try and dodge. Definitely, like I would not go Boots Rune into Blitzcrank, because you're gonna want to rush Swifties immediately. That being said, Swifties is getting changed next patch, so you're gonna have even less movement speed to dodge him. Um, I think, yeah, Blitzcrank is you just have to play really safe behind minions, potentially give up farm. If he buys sweeper, good luck. Yeah, just play around minions and like wave states is the best thing you can do. Try and freeze. I think it's definitely one of Senna's worst matchups in the game. Pike, I think, is even worse. I don't know. I flip flop between these two, but I think Pike is worse. And the reason what makes Pike so bad is he can literally W up right in front of your face and just try and pull you and dash away and like stun you. And if he lands that, like you're just gonna die. Like you have to burn flash, and then he could try it again. And he just gets so many free attempts to do it. Um, if you're facing a really bad, I would actually say just go Stormrazor. But Storm Mage is getting removed, so he can't do that anymore. Uh, Edge of Night is a good rush into him as long as they don't have a ADC that's easily gonna like proc it. But Pike is definitely like a worthy ban. Like you outscale him, but the early game is really really rough. It's really really rough. Now Brand, I actually think Brand is pretty easy. Um, a lot of Brand is a little. I wouldn't go boots ruined into him. Um, your magical footwear. I would definitely probably go celerity for that additional early game movement speed. You're gonna want to rush boots into him, and a lot of Brand is just you're basically just dashing around, just trying to get him to waste W. Um, Once you waste W, it's very easy to just walk behind a minion. If he uses like he has to hit Q on you. If he doesn't hit Q on you, um, and if you manage to juke W as well, like standing behind a minion wave, and him missing W, you just outtrade him, and you could free stack, and he has no sustain, so you could out sustain Brand as well. I think Senna stands really far back, so his level 6 isn't very effective. He has to flash on you to even get close, unless he has like Ash Arrow or something. Um, I think this is one of the better matchups. It's not like Xerath, which is substantially more difficult. And if you're getting poked down by him, you could just Q proc through a minion to get your fleet plus heal. Um, and that's part of how you out sustain him. Um, Braum. I think Braum is a pretty difficult matchup, actually. I think compositionally wise, if you're a support and you're facing a Braum, like their comp is just way better than you. It could be uh, potentially easy to stack, but it's very, very easy for them to just all in you, especially if it's like Braum Lucian, for example. Let's say Braum hits Q on you. You are significantly slowed, and their ADC is just going to run you down. The most you can do is E, but um, and the benefit is if you do get stunned while you're going to E, the E is still going to happen while you get CC'd, so it's still going to go off. Um, but I don't know. The matchup is just so stressful. Like you have to really dodge Q in this matchup, and then like level 60 he's going to try and hit ult on you as well. And his E is also because your auto attacks aren't a projectile, he's not gonna block it. Your auto attacks, which is nice, but he's still gonna block your Q and W, which is like a large part of how you do damage to people behind him, or just how you do damage in general. Um, it's a difficult matchup, but I don't think it's like the worst. It's definitely doable, but you have to pay a lot of attention, and you can't get too close to one of his minions because he's just gonna W on it and auto you. And so that's something you have to be careful of. You have to stand far enough away from his minions. Galio, dude, this is if you ever see Galio support, pick Senna. Like all you have to do is just like level 1, you could just poke the shit out of them. You poke the shit out of their ADC, you poke the shit out of Galio. Um what you're gonna want to do is you're gonna want to auto them, and then as soon as you attract creep aggro, you're gonna want to walk back in bushes to get rid of the aggro. It's just, oh, dude, you could just stack for free. Definitely rush movement speed because he's gonna E at you and then he's gonna try and taunt you. But if you rush, I wouldn't go magical footwear in this lane. Uh, you can just like proc fleet and just walk away and just stack, and then he's just walking away with no cooldowns. I think this is one of the best matchups that you could possibly get lane into. He's also anti MR, and you do all AD damage. He's just, yeah, I don't know. If you get this matchup, um, you're probably only losing this like 30%, 20 to 30% of the time, unless you just start like brutal camp or something, or like bad ADC. Um, Gragas, I don't know when the last time I've seen a Gragas support is. My guess is it's probably even. He's probably gonna want to E flash on you, and you have to play around it. I feel like Gragas E flashes are a little telegraphed though. You could kind of see them coming. Just have good vision and I think it's fine. Don't play like an idiot. Janna, I think is easy. I think Janna gives you a shit ton of stacks. Every Janna has syndrome where they just want to walk up and W you because they're bored and they have spell thieves. Maybe they have mana flow as well. Um, the only thing you really have to look out for in Janna is NATO, um, because you're very vulnerable when you're knocked up. But as long as you're playing around that, you can literally just like walk up to Janna and just like auto queue her. Um, I don't know. Just like trade with her every time your fleet is up. Just don't get so overextended that their ADC is going to kill you too. Um, but yeah, you can bully this lane and you can get a lot of free stacks. Karma, I think, is even. I think early game Karma is pretty hard. Like she definitely is a lot stronger than you early game. Uh, her root makes you very vulnerable, especially if they have someone like Kaisa. Her RQ is gonna nuke like a third of your HP early game. But I think you can kind of like sustain it up, proccing fleet with your Q. Um, and I do think you outscale. Uh, and I think the match gets easier with time. I think this is a very even matchup. I'd put it easier, more even, harder than Gragas. Leona, it's definitely a hard matchup. I don't think it's as hard as these two up here, these hookers. Um, you just have to level 6. It's a little bit harder, um, because she has a lot more range with her ult. You have to play more careful at level 6. But before level 6, you have to avoid getting hit by your E at all costs. Um, dash dancing, you're probably not rushing boots in this matchup. Uh, or you probably are rushing boots in this matchup, so no magical footwear. Uh, when her E is down, you just stack. She's super vulnerable. Um, but until she blows it, you're kind of just like trying to stack with Q and W. Like you just can't even auto in this lane, or you just end up getting overextended, and you'll die for it. Um, Lulu, Lulu does a lot of damage early game, like unreasonable amounts of damage early game. Um, that being said, I think I'd probably put it around Bard, the same level. I'll put it I'll put it above Bard because I think she just deals so much damage, and she's gonna like buff like a carry like Twitch or something probably, um, which can get like super irritating. Um, but yeah, I think it's pretty easy to stack on her. She's one of the matchups where you can like feel like you can always like trade with fleet and you don't have to feel bad about it. Um, yeah. Overall, I think like Senna has a slight advantage, in that she has sustain and Lulu doesn't. But she does like way more damage than you early game. Not like way more, but you have to be like smartish with your trades. Um, Lux is a pretty difficult matchup. It's not as hard as these two. You just have to avoid getting hit by Q and E. It's just you're just basically juking skill shots the entire game, and you're mostly gonna be poking with Q and W. It's pretty hard to get an auto off on Lux. Um, I think it can be a little rough because there's a lot of gank setup, and you could die pretty easily to ganks facing a Lux. Um, but you can get through it. You could potentially get like Edge of Night, Rapid Fire for more additional movement speed to juke. Definitely rush boots in this matchup. And even like a serrated Dirk for like getting like Umbral or something. Can give you a lot more healing and sustain for your ADC. Um, not the worst, but yeah, a little bit of a difficult matchup. Um, I think Maokai sucks. I think this champion is so overhyped, especially now, and like now that they've nerfed his movement speed. Like Alistar, sometimes you'll try and like Q auto him, and he'll be in dash range. Maokai dash range is terrible. Like the moment you get 640 stacks, like you have 40 stacks, you're just outranging this guy completely, and you could just poke him down. He can only engage on you if he flashes or if he like cheeses you from a bush. I think this is actually like a free matchup. I don't know. If I ever lose to a Maokai support, it's not because of my lane. Um, Morgana. I actually think Morgana is a pretty easy matchup. Um, I put Janna above Brand. And the reason for that is Morgana has no sustain. Like she just has Q. Her black shield doesn't do anything outside stop your W route and your Q slow. But you do all your damage. She has no sustain. Like her passive, she's not sustaining from it because she's not dealing that much damage. Um, it's pretty free. Just don't get hit by Q. Like you can stand close to your minions. Just don't overextend past them. And then like when you have like 20 or so stacks, like you can just start zoning their ADC off the wave. I just be careful of like Q flashes, like her flashing and queuing you. If you get rooted, like you probably might die. Um, but the moment you get rooted, you want to immediately press E. You want to use your camouflage, your mist. That way their ADC has to walk up closer to you. And it gives you a little like extra like a half a second of breathing room. Um, Nami, I think Nami is even. Um, Nami is gonna be their ADC, like her E is gonna make ADCs just go off on you. So it can be a little bit difficult to stack at times. Um, but as long as you don't fall behind in this lane, you can get stacks and scale. I think Eclipse can be like a very strong rush into her because you can just out trade their ADC, and then like if their ADC has to go ham on you, and you have Eclipse and you get that shield proc and you deal a lot of damage, their AD like you're gonna win the trade because your ADC is gonna destroy them from being unfocused. Um, I'd probably put it just below Karma. I think Karma is a little bit more difficult because of Karma's RQ. Nautilus. I think this is a very skill based matchup. Um, I put it above Karma. Nautilus has to hit QU obviously. Um, but when you get enough movement speed, I think he's very telegraphed and he's very predictable and you could play around it. And he has to do things like bush cheese you or like flash hook you or like hex flash out of a bush. Stuff like that. Um so yeah, I think with Nautilus you just have to play you like pretty close to your like the front of your minions. You want to stand right behind them basically, but you have to be very careful with stepping over them because it's going to become a war where he's going to try and hit you by like a pixel, and if he hits you you're going to die. Like it's just going to happen, or you're burning every summoner while he burns like ignite. um but you do substantially outscale in this matchup, and once he hits level 6 he's going to R you or your ADC, and you could just counteract that with your own R, and zone off their ADC in the process. Um, I think this matchup gets substantially. It's one of the matchups that gets substantially easier as you scale. Um, yeah, Pantheon. I haven't played in Pantheon in ages. I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on this one. Um, I think it's probably harder than Lulu. Um, but his ult is super telegraphed. I think he's one of the characters that suffers the most from you getting your range increases. Just don't get level 2 or 3 cheesed. Like he has to win the first 3 levels or he's just not going to win the lane. Um, so just be like play relatively safe. You might lose some stacks early. But his W has a lot of range and it does a lot of damage. Um, so as long as you're playing far back enough around your minion waves, you should be fine. Um, Rakan, I feel like Rakan, it's kind of around these four. These four are like the most common supports you're gonna face. I swear to God. In addition to Janna. Uh, I think Rakan, it's probably just below Karma. Uh, it's just a spacing battle. You're gonna want to stack on Rakan and their ADC, and there's gonna be you're gonna want to boots rush into him, so no magical footwear. And it's just gonna be if you space out his W, you're gonna substantially win his trades. If you get hit by his W, um, you're gonna get your health. You're either gonna get chunked really hard, or you're gonna have to burn summoners. Um, yeah, but this matchup gets a lot easier when you have like 40 stacks, I would say. Because then you have a lot more freedom to juke his W, and you'll also have more mobility. This matchup gets easier. Be careful about his level 6 arc W though. There's not a lot of counterability you can do. What you can do is the moment he's about to hit you with the W when you see it coming, you could either predictively flash it, or you can R in advance for the shield to give you tankiness. If you're trying to fight it. Um, Rel, dude, I think the more I play this matchup, the easier it gets, man. I think Rel is like I put Rel probably bottom of even. I used to think this matchup would be something like up here, but her W is just so telegraphed, man. Like you can literally just Q auto Rel in lane like from level 1, 2, 3, and like she has to be aggressive on you because you're gonna outscale her. So she has to like yeah, you're gonna be bullying their ADC, like, and even if you can't do anything, like even if you aren't autoing them, just getting minions in lane and like getting stacks through QW, for example, looking for stacks that way. Um, it's if you fall behind, this matchup can get very difficult, and she could definitely like clear bushes and bush cheese you, so that's something you have to be careful about. But I think this is one of the easier skill matchups. Um, Seraphine. Okay, if it's Seraphine 80 APC, I think it would be a little bit harder. But Seraphine support, dude, like I don't know, her skill shots are so slow. And like as Senna, you're building like all mobility, so you're gonna be juking everything. Um, I would definitely go like the Kraken build into this. Um, for that extra mobility to dodge your spells, because this champion, like as long as you're not getting hit by ease and you're predicting like she's a very telegraphed character. You just have to dodge her skill shots and you win. But I think it's a lot easier to do with something than like Lux. Just don't get hit by her R. That's the biggest thing. Um, you just have to try and bait out. A lot of it is just baiting out her abilities in lane, more or less. Because once she uses her double E, she's really vulnerable. Um, Set support, nobody plays this anymore. It'd probably be free stacks. Shaco support, okay, Shaco AD is like kind of cancer. Not gonna lie, because he just teleports behind you, does Hail of Blades, and just like chunks most of your health. I think AP Shaco is pretty like easy, to be honest. Um, he's gonna like throw a dagger on you, but you're gonna like Q auto him, and you're just gonna out sustain him. And you can bully them out of lane. Just be careful with his clone shenanigans. You could root his clone and just walk away from it. Um, if it's AP Shaco support, I would put him like, and be careful. Don't walk into obvious box locations. Don't get baited by his low health. I'd put it below Janna. Um, if it's 80 Shaco though, it'd be something like up here, dude. 80 Shaco just hurts. You have to play very safe from bushes. And start sweeper. You always want to start sweeper into Shaco. Shen. Shen is free stacks. Let's be honest. His E range is not long enough. He has to E flash if he ever wants to engage on you. Sona. I think Sona is bottom of even. And the reason why she's not an easy is because she scales really well. That being said, I think Senna scales harder. And I think she's going to be trading with you all of lane. She wants her stacks. You want your stacks. So you just like trade with each other all the time. Um, so both of you guys are going to be really big and scaled. Soraka, I think is pretty easy. Um, you like this entire lane is just avoiding getting hit by Q, basically. I'd put it like this. Um, Soraka, you will out sustain her if you just don't get hit by Q. You could literally poke her down with QW. Um, when she misses her Q, that's vulnerability where you could just walk up and auto their ADC or her. Um, this lane is entirely just dodging Q, basically. If your ADC keeps getting hit by Q, then you'll probably lose the lane. That's just how it is. Uh, but once you have like 60 stacks or so, um, playing against Soraka gets pretty easy, I would say. Um, Taric, Taric scales really well, but you get a lot of stacks from him in lane, like a lot. And every time he's gonna do this thing where he's gonna walk at you in E, and what you're gonna do is you're gonna Q, and then it's gonna give you your fleet movement speed, and you're just gonna walk like you just pick a direction, and he either needs to get lucky and match your movement and hit you pixel perfect, or you're just gonna walk out and then you're gonna like auto him like 3 times, and he's gonna lose. You're gonna stack, and he's gonna lose some HP. Um, that being said, he's E Flash could definitely be a little cheese. So it's not like a free matchup. Um, probably put it like this. And yeah, he just scales so well. Like he could tower dive. Um, but I think most people don't use Tark to his full efficiency. He's a pretty difficult champ to play, and he's like incredibly boring. Thresh is a skill matchup. I think Senna has the advantage though. I would probably put Thresh below Nami but above Rel. This lane is basically you trying. You always want to be 600 range away from him, or like your maximum range, because his auto range is only 450, so you have 150 range advantage of him over him. Imagine Caitlyn versus Sivir, and basically she's gonna. You want to stack, but if he lands a hook, he will kill, and it's just avoiding hook. But Thresh hook is substantially. It has less range, and I think it's harder to land than something like Pike or Blitzcrank. There's a lot more freedom to play, and he has a lot less mobility than them. Um, play behind minions, and be careful about bushes, is the best I can say. But you outscale. And you guys also have the quest. If you manage to get the quest, like if you're both 11 and you kill Thresh, you get 40 armor and 40 ability power, which is just honestly gross because the AP gives you movement speed in your E, more healing, whatever. Um, Vel'Koz, uh, I'd say easy. Uh, Vel'Koz is all dependent on how good you are at dodging Q, mostly. Because you're going to be building so much mobility, you can, and like because you're sustained, fleeted footwork sustain plus your healing from Q, I feel like you do fine. You just have to avoid at all costs getting hit by his knockup. But it's pretty telegraphed, and you have a lot of tools to avoid it. With what your build path is, and etc. etc. Um, I'd probably put it above Bard and above Lulu. I put it top of easy. Xerath is hard. His level 6, he's just gonna try and chunk you out. Um, a lot of it is dependent on how good the Xerath is. I put it above Lux. Um, but if he's combined with someone like Jhin or someone like Varus, laning can be brutal. You're basically just gonna be trying. You're never gonna be autoing ever versus them. You're just gonna be trying to sustain with fleet Q. Um, but yeah, this lane gets easier the more items you get. It might if they have multiple AP, it might be worth rushing like a Spirit Visage. Um, I don't think Spirit Visage is that troll on Senna because you have healing and you have shielding, and it helps you survive a lot. You only need 3 damage items as Senna, theoretically. Um, but yeah, I don't know if I'd put it above or below Leona. I guess I'd say above. I put it above Braum. I'd put it at top of hard. But it's not impossible, and you can definitely like you do have a sustain advantage in lane, and they can be dove. So it's not the worst. All right, Vex. This is not even a support champion. Yumi. I'll do this. Yumi's just free stacks. You just stack off their ADC. Like they have to trade with you if they want to farm. Like it's just free stacks. That being said, like they do have kill potential at 6 usually with whatever champ they're playing. They're usually playing something like Zeri or Sivir. Um, but I think Yumi's just free. I'd put Yumi just above AP Shaco. Zillion, dude, Zillion E, especially with Swifties getting nerfed, like the swiftness going away. Not the swiftness, the slow resistance going away. This matchup is cancer. What he does is he's gonna E you and he's gonna double bomb you, and their ADC is just gonna kill you. Um, and it could be a little hard to stack against him. Uh, and he does scale similar to you, but I think you scale slightly better. He scales more utility, you scale more damage and carry wise. Um, yeah, once he gets like level 3, you just have to wait for him to throw out a bomb because otherwise he's just gonna E you and double bomb you. Oh, cancer lane. Zyra also a cancer lane. Um, most of Zyra. So Zyra actually isn't that threatening early game as long as you don't get hit by her E. Her E has a lot of cast time. It has like I think it's 0.25 seconds of cast time, so you could see it, and it's very slow. And as long as she doesn't land E pre-6, she just like doesn't do damage. She has like her plants that do a little, but you can auto Q and then like maybe even W, and then just walk away. And like you usually come out pretty even. And if you're taking even trades with a mage, you're gonna out sustain them in the long run. Um, yeah, you're definitely gonna want to rush Swifties into this matchup. Um, and just avoid getting hit by E. And if you get hit by Q, I guess it's a little bit of damage. Uh, yeah, and also her plants give you 3 gold, which is like combine that with your souls. That's a lot of free gold generation. Though they do waste your fleet proc, so I'd keep that in mind. You don't get the additional healing off them. Tom Kench, dude, this shit is free stacks. Just don't get hit by his W. Vigard, nobody plays Vigard support. I don't know what this is. Why is this here? Renata. I think Renata. I think you outsustain Renata. Just don't get hit by her. The thing that like grabs you and pulls you together with your ally. I think it's her E. Don't get hit by that. And the lane is like pretty freely won. When she's gonna wanna like when she gives her teammate like the death thing, you're gonna want to counteract that with ult, to give or like land the root in advance, to survive that and outlast it. Um, but yeah, you definitely like hard outscale in this matchup, and I don't think she doesn't do a lot of damage early game. Like if she's autoing you, then like you want that. You want her to walk up and auto you for her passive. Um, Swain, I think this matchup gets pretty easy at 40 stacks. I think this matchup is pretty difficult at 600 stacks. You just have to walk around and bait his E, and if he uses his E, then you could just Q a minion and walk up and auto. Um, if you get hit by E, then you're gonna immediately have to Q auto, or you're gonna want to immediately press E and then just walk away, and like Q auto on your way out. Um, but I don't think the lane is that bad. I think people overhype this as a counter, and I think you scale harder. And if he's ever level 6, just kite. Don't be next to him when he's level 6. Like if you're fighting Swain in Swain ult, then you're trolling. Um, he's like around Vel'Koz. I think Vel'Koz is slightly harder. Fiddlestick support. I don't even know what this is. He has like a stun, I guess. And he has like cheese ults. But I'm gonna be honest, you just win this lane before like he gets ult. Like he has no lane presence prior to ult. Nico, I swear to God, I think this is like one of the most cancer matchups in the game. Her root, if she roots you with her E, you are stunned for like CC for like 3 seconds. It's like a Morgana Q. It's ridiculous, man. Shit is fucking cancer. And then like she's gonna do a lot is she's gonna R as like a minion, and she's gonna flash. And you have like a slight window. You have to basically almost predict it to flash out, and like her like trading flashes with you, like you don't want to be losing your flashes, Senna. Like you need a flash defensively to survive. Um Not a great matchup, and she like also Q pokes you. It's hard to walk up and just auto her. The one advantage of the lane is you could stack her clone. So if she ever clones, you can auto Q it and just run away. Um, I think that's the one thing that makes this matchup not as bad as these two. Um, but yeah, definitely not a great matchup. She counters you pretty hard. Maybe potentially, but even if you rush like Edge of Night, like she's just gonna Q it before she does anything. I don't know. Zac support. I cannot tell you the last time I played against a Zac support. Um, don't get hit by Q. He's gonna want to Q and then grab a minion, and then he's gonna want to EU. Um, that being said, I think Zac without levels is pretty weak. So something like that. MF support is not legit. Ash support, dude. This Ash support is easy. Just she's gonna trade with you because she picked it to try and like kill you early game. So as long as you play around your minions and you just use your W smart, she's gonna take Hail of Blades and she's gonna like try and do 3 autos on you at once. Um, Stay behind minions so her W doesn't deal damage to you, and you want to predict when you're gonna trade autos with her, because what you're gonna want to do is you're gonna W at the time that, if this makes sense, at the time that she tries to auto you, you want that W to have already gone on in the direction. Because if you land W on you, you could just freely disengage. And worst case, you have E. I don't think Ash support is a bad matchup. Level 6, it gets scary. You have to play safer. You could take Cleanse if you're really, really scared, but I try to avoid taking Cleanse as Senna support. Because your ADCs hate it. But Twitch support, he's gonna roam, but like, dude, like you just out sustain. Like, Twitch support is trash into Senna. His W gives vision of you if you're on your E though, and his W can slow a lot if he's AP. Just be careful. Um, Annie support. I mean, it's easy. She can't do anything. She can't really like do it. Like she has to flash to do anything. I'd put it below Yumi to be honest. She has no damage to one shot you. Like you out sustain, but she's just gonna hold four stuns, and she's like you just like have to QW. You can't use autos on them. It's just an annoying lane, but I think it's like pretty free in general. Um, I don't know why Jin's here. Melio, I think, is also easy. No, I would put Melio in even. I put him in easy unless it's Melio Lucian. Melio Lucian is like so toxic to deal with, man. Um, but The thing you have to avoid is he's gonna want to throw out the Q, and if you have two options. You can either try and sidestep the Q, like predict it, because the hitbox isn't that big, or you can try and auto and then Q and then get sent back. But you're gonna want to auto first, if that makes sense. Or you Q a minion to run up to him and auto and then take the damage. If you trade a Q for like a soul, that's generally worth. He doesn't have very much sustain. His W is not that much sustain. The cooldown is very long. Just don't trade when he gives his when he gives the opponent when he gives his ADC W. You just have to wait that out, and then there's like 24 seconds of trading. Um, yeah, a lot of it's like Sona, where you're just like basically trading damage with him, but like going even in trades is you winning. And then we have, what the fuck is this? Nobody like, these are not legit. Hui support, I guess. I guess, man. Um, I never play against this dude. If Hui support is going support, if Hui is going support, that dude is handicapping his items. But this is the list. This is the list that for her matchups, and I'm gonna end it here. I hope you guys enjoyed this guide. Um, let me know what you think. Let me know if it helps you climb at all. And if you guys want me to make another guide for another champ, or like if you guys like this kind of content, let me know. Um, thanks for y'all for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.